How's it going, everybody? Welcome into some early Week 12 fantasy football talk here in today's episode on a Monday morning. I'm going to be bringing you guys some of the top waiver wire pickups for this upcoming week. After watching the Sunday slate of games, we still have the Cardinals and 49ers on Monday Night Football, but right now we are through the Sunday night game between Kansas City and the Chargers, and we'll be breaking down the things that we've seen throughout this week going back to Thursday with Tennessee versus Green Bay. There's a couple of key things from that one to take a look at here. So as always, if you're around here, feel free to drop on down, smash that subscribe button, and turn the bell on so you're never late for any content here from the SFS channel. We're posting fancy content here throughout the week, every single week throughout the rest of this season, and I want to help you guys have the best shot to win your leagues that you possibly can this year. So make sure to stay tuned, check out our episodes, and let's dive into today's waiver wire episode. Here we go. So today's episode is going to be fun. I'm going to keep you guys on your toes. We've got running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, and defenses all throughout today's episode. We've got more than 10 names to cover here throughout this video. So let's kick off with Samaje Perine of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Perine had himself the game of his life here. He had 3 total touchdowns, a hat trick, and he's only rostered in 8% of leagues. Now, of course, this isn't as much to do with the touchdowns and what was kind of a fluky, unrealistic game from him. It's more so to do with the concussion that Joe Mixon sustained in the second half of the Cincinnati Bengals and Pittsburgh Steelers contest on the Sunday afternoon slate. So for me, this is more so a pickup for Mixon owners looking for a handcuff here, or teams in a desperate situation that need a really low-end RB2 to a high-end flex play. Of course, this is a player that is going to get out in space, catch some passes. I'm not necessarily expecting 20-plus opportunities for him, but he could be somewhere in the 16 to 18 range if all things break well. And even, it's kind of a touchy circumstance to talk through concussions because we don't really know. It depends player to player, and obviously the contact of the injury, how severe it was. So Joe Mixon, we'll keep our ears peeled for more information. This could become irrelevant by Wednesday afternoon if everything's okay and he happens to clear that protocol, but he was ruled out. So a name to keep your eye on here. Again, Samaje Perine, 8% rostership and 3 total touchdowns, was very effective in the passing game in that win over Pittsburgh. Latavius Murray here. I literally talk about Latavius every single week. 23% rostership, dipped from 26% last week. Players just keep disrespecting him here. And is he a bona fide weekly starter? Absolutely not. But what he is, apparently the more dependable of the running backs in this Broncos committee. Now, the reason for that is because he's not a consistent rushing threat in terms of efficiency and weekly productivity. He is a consistent goal line opportunist, though. This is a guy that is getting work inside the 10-yard line, getting those goal line carries as well, so even closer to that goal line marker, and he's cashing in. Like I said, not super efficient here. He did have 21 total touches this week for 72 total yards. It was 23 yards through the air and that touchdown. So I think the reason he keeps getting work here is because he's a large physical player, and unlike Melvin Gordon, he doesn't continually have fumbling issues. So I think the one thing that's really holding this Broncos staff back from cutting Gordon loose in the absence of Javonte Williams, which has now been an ongoing thing for some time now, is that he just can't provide the dependability to maintain possession of the football. He ended up having another fumble in Sunday's contest in the loss against the Raiders. And again, that's sustaining life for Latavius Murray and making him a very under the radar player. His projection is going to be low every week. He's probably more suited for standard formats. Again, he is that touchdown vulture here, but he's getting that work. Therefore, he deserves a space on your roster or on a team's roster in your leagues. Cam Akers, our last running back, I believe, for today's episode at 27% rostership. I couldn't believe how low this has dipped, but at the same time, he's been absolutely terrible this season, as have basically every running back for the Rams. This is not a super flashy pickup. This is not a league-winning pickup. This is not something that's going to inevitably make a significant difference in your leagues, but this week, Akers had himself an efficient game. He was finally somewhat productive here. 14 rushing attempts, 61 yards at 4 yards plus per carry against the Saints. Now, this is a beat-up, tarnished Saints defense. They're really missing personnel and overall have been struggling as an overall unit. But for Akers, it was encouraging to see this. Now, this is another committee-style system. They're working in multiple backs into this rotation. He's not a workhorse. Again, not an absolute game changer, but he does have a nice upcoming schedule. You look at Kansas City this next week, there are a couple of red flags, but there's also some green flags as well. The first red flag, of course, is it's the Chiefs, so game script could become an immediate issue here. However, the team was without Matt Stafford to end the game. He went in concussion protocol. Should he miss time, this team will be more reliant than ever on the run game, and they will be forced to turn around and hand the football off. They're not going to ask Bryce Perkins, I believe is his name, to turn around and basically walk out there and continually hand off the football. To continually pass the football. They will ask him to continually go out there and hand off the football because they're going to protect themselves from, unnecessary turnovers. So again, this is a very low upside pickup, but there is the potential for him to reach a threshold of, 60 to 80 rushing yards, depending on how many attempts he gets. And if you have to start him next week again at Kansas City, you just, hope that he scores a touchdown or makes some noteworthy type of play that ends up warranting a start. But again, he is probably best suited, actually not probably, he is 100% best suited on your bench. This is a pickup for 12 plus man formats. He doesn't really have any business being on teams in shallower leagues. It's just the running back position, as always, as you all know, incredibly difficult to come across starters, to come across guys that are consistent contributors in lineups that you can actually depend on to make that difference for your teams. Demarcus Robinson at 4% rostership here, diving into the wide receiver position. In the last 3 weeks, he has looked more and more like the number one wide receiver threat when healthy for this team. He was actually doubtful for a couple weeks ago against the Saints into a Monday Night Football game. Ended up sustaining his lineup viability by getting into the offense and being able to suit up and play. Had himself a rather underwhelming game, but if you look at his target totals in 2 of the last 3 contests, he's had 8 or more. So definitely working in here. Obviously, no Rashad Bateman for the rest of the season. Devin Duvernay is talented, but he tends to be a low target player, a guy who's more of a big play threat. DeMarcus has been the guy here as of late. He is talented to an extent. He can make plays down the field. He held in 9 catches for 128 yards this week against Carolina. He has Jacksonville in Week 12, an exploitable matchup. And like I said, 2 out of his last 3 games, he's had 8 or more targets. That's encouraging, and you hope to see that continue here. Mark Andrews, as we all know, the healthier he gets, the more frequently he's going to be throwing the football. But at the actual wide receiver position, DeMarcus looks like he is closing in on that role for a Lamar Jackson pass catcher. Treylon Burks from the Thursday night game, we hinted on this in the intro of today's episode, a 20% rostership. There's a lot of opportunity here to get an incredibly skillful, I would say, of the available wide receivers we're talking through today. He's probably the most talented. Now, is that necessarily going to translate into the most fancy production? That's yet to be seen. Honestly, I would tend to lean towards no here, but should he break out down the stretch of this season, there's a lot of opportunity for upside here. So what you've got is a first-round pick in this past year's draft, and a lot of the comps and comparisons were drawn to A.J. Brown and the role that he played for this Tennessee offense in the past. And I see it. I don't think he's as good of a player as A.J. Brown. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say he is not at this time. I think that A.J. obviously is a veteran receiver, a very good route runner and physical menace to tackle, is the better player right now, but Treylon Burks, as a physical standpoint is concerned, has a lot of the similarities. Now, they need a vertical weapon in this offense, and they were able to successfully hook up with Treylon Burks on 2 vertical passing attempts this week. That's encouraging. That's really good to see here. Hopefully, seeing the success they had against Green Bay this past week, they'll be more inclined to try it more. The one thing for Treylon Burks that is kind of a disclaimer here, though, is that a 51-yard reception, taking that out of his 111-yard total on 7 receptions, would make him 6 for about 60 yards here this past week. You're looking at a play where with 2 minutes and 4 seconds left in the game, they basically ran a play-action fake and ran Burks down the left sideline and caught a sleeping Jair Alexander on a 51-yard connection. So you take that away, and this game doesn't look nearly as good. But like I said, early in the game, they were able to hit him on a vertical play. That second vertical play very late in the game, hopefully that urges Tennessee's offensive staff to throw him the ball more downfield. Early in A.J. Brown's career, and honestly throughout his career in Tennessee, what he made his money off of as a Titan was vertical passing plays or deep crossers coming out of the play action game set up from Derrick Henry in this rushing offense. So the more comfortable he gets with the playbook, the more they trust him to call plays for him, the more success he can have here. Again, over 80% of your leagues have Burks available. He is worth a stash at the very least. You are not putting him in lineups yet, but there's a whole lot on the table to like as far as being a fantasy asset is related for the rest of the season. Wan'Dale Robinson at 27% 47% now. I debated having him on the list or not for today. He suffered a knee injury and sustained a knee issue that inevitably ruled him out of the contest and got him obviously nicked up towards the end of this game. But hopefully within a week or so time, maybe he misses time, maybe not, but I would expect a knee issue probably does miss some time here. We're not exactly sure what the nature of that is right now, at least when I'm recording this video on Sunday night. So for Wan'Dale, though, he had kind of a resurgence. So if you remember his like semi-breakout a few weeks back, he comes out here in week 11, catches 9 of his 13 targets for 100 yards, so crossing the century marker there. And it's just a really solid flex player in PPR formats to go out there and contribute to your lineups. Obviously, not the biggest prospect in the world, probably not going to be a touchdown magnet at all the rest of the season, but think of him kind of the similar way that you think about a Rondale Moore, a really quick and shifty, speedy, undersized slot weapon that's just really good laterally. That allows him to create separation, and again, in that slot role, sandwich between other players, get space, get leverage, and create plays on the defense. So it was a great matchup this week. Detroit is very weak in the secondary. He exploited that. He was the top receiver for this Giants offense. Put some context behind it, though. We're not expecting this every week going forward, and again, he did sustain that injury, so this could make him a bit of a stash for really deep leagues or rosters that have multiple injured reserve spots where you can actually just kind of hide him away for a couple of games or until he's able to return to your lineups. Donovan Peoples-Jones here, DPJ, 44% rostership for him. Deshaun Watson's return right around the corner. He has, I believe it's 5 straight games. Let me check my notes here of over 60 yards receiving. Yes, it is 5 games in a row with 60 plus yards for DPJ here. And like I said, Deshaun Watson's presence and resurgence in this offense, or insertion, really, it hasn't happened yet in his career as a Cleveland Brown. He has not played a game in the regular season for them yet, but with his insertion into this offense, you're expecting that ceiling to rise here, and for him as a vertical weapon on the perimeter to make more plays for this team and contribute to this Browns lineup. That, of course, is stuff we like to hear. OBJ at 43%. He is currently a free agent. He's rumored to make his signing decision after Thanksgiving. After this week, I would say the emphasis shifts from being co-favorites between the Giants and the Cowboys to solely the Cowboys. They crushed the Vikings 40-3. They look like the hot team in the NFC, and they just had kind of a low moment last week against Green Bay, but they looked phenomenal and just absolutely obliterated the number 2 seed in the NFC, the Minnesota Vikings. I about said the Philadelphia Eagles. So I do think that puts some precedence on Dallas. Hopefully they go out and make a move here. If not, there are plenty of situations where Beckham could thrive as a big play receiver, as the number 2 option there. That's what he is. He's a savvy, explosive veteran. Hopefully he's still got some of that juice left in the tank after the second ACL to the same knee. That's all yet to be seen, but over half of your leagues have the opportunity for him to be added and acquired. Deshaun, back to the Cleveland Browns here, 48% rostership. This is a guy who is an incredibly talented quarterback. We haven't seen him in over a calendar year, though, so there might be some rust. Albeit, though, if you guys have a struggling quarterback spot or could use a high-end quarterback too, I highly doubt he's available in 2 QB leagues, but we're talking here from the standpoint of a 1 quarterback league. He does have upside. He has playmakers, a solid run game, a good offensive line, 2 good perimeter receivers, an underrated slot receiver in David Bell, who hasn't gotten much work yet. David Njoku has returned this past week. I believe he finished that contest. I'd have to double check that. But again, another big-bodied weapon for the red zone in the middle of the field. There's a lot to like here about Deshaun and what he brings to the table for this offense. Again, I think that if he gets into a groove, he elevates the play of everyone in this offense. That, of course, is big news for fantasy owners regardless of position. Juwan Johnson, I believe this is the man with the crazy wife from TikTok or whatever that likes to go out and spend all of his money. If you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, go look it up. It's funny stuff. Basically, she's just talking about how she's entitled to spending all of Juwan Johnson's money. I could be wrong here. I'm not sure if she is currently employed or not. But good old Juwan Johnson, man, is he making her some money if he's got incentives in his contract here to spend? Because this guy has been on a hot streak, scoring touchdowns left and right. And for a guy who honestly was not expected to be the dude for the Saints offense at the tight end position, you've got yourself some Adam Troutman. You've got yourself Taysom Hill, who's not really a tight end, but is classified that way for fantasy football. And then good old Juwan comes out here. It just starts balling out. He has been a really good weapon in the vertical passing game for this team. Juwan is a player who has seen double-digit production in 3 straight games here and has a touchdown in all 3 of those games. So impressive stuff. He's become one of the more weekly reliable passing targets in the Saints offense behind, of course, guys like Chris Olave. Jarvis Landry kind of had a resurgence resurgence this week. We'll see how he factors in, potentially based off of the rostership on your playing platform. Jarvis is another Saint to target for this week, but Juwan, definitely ride hot hands at the tight end position. That tends to work out here for guys that have low rostership. It just is a very streaky position as a whole. So if you find that guy that's getting used in his offense in a given season, take advantage of that, seize that opportunity, and move forward the rest of the way. And then defensive streams for this week. I love these teams for the past few weeks here now. I'm diving back into the Jets here. Love these guys. Can't believe they're only rostered in 46% of leagues. This needs to be above 60, if not 70%. They get after it. They play physical, inspired football. Both defenses played a hell of a game, New England and the Jets in week 11 here. They've got Chicago this week, and Justin Fields is pretty banged up. He had that shoulder injury. They got him carted off the field late in that game against Atlanta. It was the non-throwing shoulder that's important, but we'll see how that factors into his status and availability for week 12. Again, this Jets defense is very, very tough, physical. They fly around, they play fast, they get after your quarterback. There's a lot of upside and reasons to like this, especially if there is no Justin Fields. That is a huge mover of the needle in terms of the outcome of this game coming up here in week 12. And then the Dolphins at 22% rostership against Houston. Boy, have they looked awful since that Philadelphia Eagles game where they kind of gave Philly a run for their money. They have been hot garbage since then. Dameon Pierce, poor guy, had two freaking fantasy. Actually, he had one fantasy point, I believe, in half PPR scoring this week after basically their whole offense got shut down and they were trailing for the majority of the contest. It was a brutal, brutal game. Now, being the idiot I am, I bet the Houston Texans +3 against the Commanders at home this week. And again, they got totally shell-shocked. Now, this Dolphins defense is rested. They're coming off of a bye. As I said, this Houston offense is basically playing like a JV football team right now, and they just look lost out there. So, opportunities for interceptions, sloppy plays and fumbles, lack of total yardage gained, minimal points scored against this team. There's a lot of opportunities depending on the different incentives and markers that you have in your leagues to take advantage of this matchup and make a big deal here for a streamer defense if you don't have one of those top-end units locked up on your roster. So there you have it. Those were 12 different options that I like adding here early in the Week 12 waiver wire process. As always, if you guys enjoyed today's episode, smash that like button. It helps me out a lot. Here helps other people find this episode, helps other fantasy players find their way in their leagues here if they need some help. And as always, we just love talking football. So at the end of the day, maybe you literally don't need any help at all. But I love talking to you guys and just chatting through the stuff that I'm observing and the different breakdowns that I have from this past week's games. And obviously as we move forward into the coming week. So I appreciate the heck out of all you guys. Happy Thanksgiving week here. I'm going to do my best to be with you guys as much as I possibly can here. I've got rankings updates and all that stuff coming on the website, but of course I want to get out content for you guys this week as well. Maybe you've got some extra vacation time, some extra time to kick back and relax, spend some time with family. SFS is not the priority here, of course, for you guys or fantasy football for that matter. This week it's about family here and chilling and being with the people that you love in your life and are thankful for. But of course, football goes on here, and we of course still love the game, so we're chatting through all this stuff and breaking it down for you all in week 12. So I'm pumped for this week. We've got a Thursday stacked slate. The games, albeit there is some major discrepancies in the level of competition between teams that are matched up this week, they are still going to be fun, and it's a holiday tradition here. So excited for all that stuff. I've got our lessons learned and takeaways episode from week 11 out this morning as well. Check that out if you haven't done so already. I will see you in that episode. Peace out.